Hey guys, Sean here from Life and Tennis. Today, I'll be discussing my first experience working in the media at the Australian Open with Christian Montegan.
Yeah.
So Christian is a sports journalist. So Christian, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background as a journalist and how you got involved with the first serve, basically.
Yeah, sure. So it's funny because a few years ago I sort of started out in business, which is a pretty weird pathway. And then afterwards I sort of thought, okay, this isn't really for me. So I always loved sports from a young age, whether it be tennis, soccer, basketball, AFL. So loved everything. So I thought might as well get into journalism.
Yep.
I'm at RMIT now in the city, third year, so it's my final year hopefully. And then graduating on from there, trying to look for some work experience as well for that final year. Courses always have that.
Yeah, right.
Of course. For each for each course, each subject, and enjoying it, learning a lot of skills. Whether it be podcasts and whatnot. So since I made that transition, it's been pretty smooth, and really enjoying it.
Yeah, sure. So I guess just to give everyone a little bit of background on how Christian and I sort of came to work at the Australian Open, we both write for a website called The First Serve, which is run by Brett Phillips, who's a sports broadcaster. He's kind of been doing that for a long time now, and he covers the Grand Slams and particularly like the Australian Open. He does what would you say he does at the Australian Open? It's like the on the ground, like during the day he'll do like the around the grounds, like around the courts, like he kind of gives you an update on all the results and things like that. So,
that too, and also a bit of commentary on the side.
Yeah, a bit of commentary. Yeah, he does the commentary at night time as well for SCN. So, and I guess we both reached out to him at some point to start working for The First Serve, and then the opportunity just came around, didn't it? So how did you what was your decision making when it came to wanting to be part of the Australian Open? Did you seek it out, or were you asked to do it, or how did it sort of all come about?
Well, rewinding back to 12 months ago, sort of, I reached out to Brett Phillips if I could write for The First Serve.
Yep.
Just sent him an email, and he said, yeah, sure, I'm happy for you to hop on board. And from there, I've just been writing articles from him. And then, a few months down the line, it was about maybe October, I thought, the Australian Open's coming up. I might reach out to Brett to see if there's any available spots for media accreditation. So reached out to him, met over a coffee, and he just said just to sort out all the details. He'll send the forms out. And there was about 5 or 6 of us that got a gig there at the Australian Open for media accreditation. So great experience.
Yeah, that's right. So there were 5 or 6 of us. So I guess there were 5. I think there were five journalists, and then one that was doing the social media or the photos and things like that.
Yeah.
So how did you find it? Because for me, for both of us, I think we were the only ones I can't remember if Todd, it was his first time, but for you and me, I definitely know it was our first time at the Australian Open as media, working in the media. How did you find it? Because for me, I found it was a bit initially it was very there was so much going on that I didn't even know how to kind of just to find places like this, certain rooms to go to, and it was how did you find getting into the media hub and getting in amongst it?
Well, when I picked up the media accreditation pass, I think it was about the Friday, so a few days prior to the opening rounds of qualifying, which is when I first started to do it.
The qualifying,
So once I picked up that pass, there was a couple of security guards there, so we were allowed to just sort of roam around the grounds, try and get used to it a bit, because looking at the first few days of qualifying was just pretty hard to get your head around things, where everything is. But once you went to the media hub, and everyone was so nice there, just directing you where to go and stuff. Obviously we had Brett there as well. He's been there for a few years now, so he's got that experience behind him. He had a couple of others who's been there for a couple of times as well. So little things like that. But overall, it was pretty overwhelming to begin with, not knowing, what to do, where to go, all this. Obviously, I've been to the Australian Open before to watch the games, but, reporting on it, being part of the media is completely different. So it was just a completely new experience.
And how did you find... because for me personally, I guess all of us, we were, as writers, we were splitting our time between the radio room, writing up our reports, and then obviously going to the matches and things like that and covering them, and even just around the grounds and watching, the practice, the hit ups and things like that, the players practicing, taking some photos. I know we were, it wasn't necessarily a requirement, but Brett did like us to take some photos as well for social media, because I guess, with the first serve, it's, we're not just journalists, but they've got, all the social media platforms as well. So how did you find like dividing your time between, what matches, when to go to a match, when to go back and start doing the write-up? Like, how did you kind of, manage your time in that way?
Yeah, it was definitely sort of tricky to begin with, sort of the scheduling, because just say, for instance, I was at Rod Laver Arena watching on a high-profile match, just say, on Igor Swiatek, for example. You maybe watch her for the first half an hour, and then Brett would send a message in the group saying, okay, an Aussie's playing on the outside courts, can you please go and, take a photo for the website? So because just on the side, it's very difficult for us to, get photos or video footage, as you would have known, from the Australian Open, because they were sort of a bit strict around those things, especially with video content, which is fair enough with all the copyrights and stuff that go with it. But yeah, in terms of photos, just went around the grounds, tried to take the best possible shot, close up. We didn't have sort of the best technology, but
I guess we're not photographers.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's not our sort of forte, but at the same time, like these days, phones have all got pretty good cameras in them. So
exactly
as long as you like take a steady photo, and press the focus button, it's usually good enough. So
and then there was the press conferences as well, which is another thing. So there was also a separate WhatsApp group where sort of the moderators would send messages saying, 2:00, for example, Novak Djokovic is in the main press room. So if you're watching a game on the outside court, for example, you've got to, balance that as well to say, okay, if I want to maybe ask him a question, I've just got to be there, bang on, or 5 minutes prior just to get myself ready, maybe prepare a couple of questions if I wanted to. So yeah, there was a lot going on, but yeah, overall very enjoyable.
Yeah, that's right. And just to go back quickly, just to kind of fill everyone in, you mentioned the fact that we couldn't take videos as part of like the copyright, thing with the Australian Open. So I guess like from what we were told beforehand, even Brett was saying this to us, I think that was fine in the past, wasn't it? I think photos were okay, but just video recording you weren't allowed to post on. I think you could still. Or could you not do it even on your social? I think you could do it on your own social media.
I think for the socials it was okay, but anything other than that was a bit sort of risky and wasn't allowed. So. Yeah,
that's right. So and then you then touched on briefly just then talking about like press conferences as well, which I forgot to mention too. I guess as working in the media there, we had with our media pass, we had access to all the press conferences, which for me was such a massive thrill, because I guess you watch I don't know, if you're a tennis nerd like us, anyone that that loves watching tennis, you like watching not just the matches but the post-match, the press conference afterwards, and like I will watch the whole thing, you know what I mean? So to actually sit in that room and be, especially the main interview room, and be part of that was really special. Very at the same time, it was very nerve-wracking initially, but like it's just really cool because there's this kind of, I don't know, there's almost this inclusivity, like you just feel like you're just part of it, and especially most of the players are they kind of treat you like you're an equal in a sense. And obviously like they're, a lot of them, the high profile ones especially, are like media trained, so like they're used to it, and some of them it's just like they
second nature
to them. That's right. But like, how did you find, was that kind of your first experience interviewing major players, like
first experience ever. So obviously it's going to be a bit, nerve-wracking to begin with, like you mentioned, seeing all these high-profile players that you sort of watch on TV and sort of idolise, like Djokovic, for example.
Yeah, of course.
I got the privilege to ask him a question, and I had to go a bit controversial there, but asked him a question, and he was, pretty good with his time, even all the questions, he sort of spends a lot of time, 2-3 minutes each question.
And Brett actually mentioned that beforehand, didn't he? That Novak, he's like, don't be afraid to like ask him a question just because it's Novak Djokovic. Like he'll take the time to answer your question if you put your hand up, and if the moderator does get around to you. Exactly. I guess like there's so many journalists there that it really is up to like the moderator to decide. Like if it's really busy and there's a lot of questions, that they're probably going to go with choose the more high profile journalist, so to speak, and we were more on the lower end, let's say. But you did ask him a question, didn't you?
Yeah. I forgot what the question was exactly around, but I think it was after his 4th round match against Adrian Mannarino.
Yes, yeah.
And there was about something along the lines of, because it was such an easy victory from memory. Right. He dropped about 3 games, I think it was, from memory. And I just sort of asked him.
3 or something, yeah.
I know it was definitely a bagel the first set, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I sort of asked him something around the lines of, because you're getting to a stage where, you're winning a lot of easy games, is there sort of potential for, you know, a sense of boredom creeping in? I know it's sort of a weird question. I think I actually mentioned that to him. You know, is sort of family on your mind a bit more, missing them from home? And he mentioned all that, saying, yeah, family aspect is, you know, on his mind a lot more, you know, missing his young family, having to travel a lot. So, yeah, I thought it was a pretty relevant question to ask. But at the same time, being a new journalist like myself, you don't want to sort of put yourself in a situation where you're asking sort of, you know, silly questions or putting yourself in the spotlight, where there was a couple of questions where journalists would ask a couple of the Ukrainian players about the war, and you could tell they were a bit sick and tired of it. Like that,
they would get that all the time, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's just an example. You just don't want to be in that position where, you know, you sort of ask sort of an awkward question, or you want to put the player in an awkward position, or put yourself in a bad headline, so to speak.
Or even like yourself, like your own reputation.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Especially if you're starting out, you don't want to be known. You don't want to become known as like an antagonist, I guess, or someone that's going to ask those types of questions. You know, I guess like I'm not going to name names, but there are definitely journalists out there that kind of make it a living to, you know, that's kind of their shtick a bit. You know, which I guess is, you know, each to their own. But I guess for us, like for me personally, I know when I was asking questions, I was just trying to elicit the best possible answer, or a question that I thought that they would, the player might, you know, would appreciate and would kind of resonate with.
Yeah, of course.
Because I remember me personally, so you mentioned the Djokovic press conference and the question you asked, and I asked, I was able to ask Carlos Alcaraz a question after he lost to Alexander Zverev in the, I think it was the quarterfinals, and because he ended up winning the third set in a tiebreak, but he was basically outplayed for the first two sets essentially, and even the third set it looked like it was going to be straight sets, and then somehow he just, you know, pulled something out of the hat, and I remember when I was watching, because I was watching the match live, and then, you know, I went to the press conference, and I remember thinking, you know, there's a great question here about like the energy of the crowd. And the funny thing was, when I went into the press conference, I actually initially had a different question in mind, which was about the fact that Ferrero's coach wasn't there. I think it was only the second time he hadn't been travelled, you know, to a major tournament with him, basically. And I was going to ask him, has that had an impact on his campaign, his Australian Open campaign, essentially? And the funny thing was, just as I was about to ask the question, a journalist before me had asked the exact same question, but very poorly as well. Like he asked just very abruptly, and Alcaraz's response was just, you could just tell he was being polite, but you could just tell from his tone, he didn't like the question. And he sort of was very short with his answer, and I could just tell the energy there. He was like, I don't really like that. So I had to kind of come up with a question on the spot. And I remember thinking, like, before this had happened, which again, probably my next question to you is, you know, I made sure that I had a backup. I had several backup questions. Like I didn't just have one, I had like 3 ready to go. But I was like, I really hope that it's one of these ones, because if it's like one of the like the last few backup ones, they're probably not going to get that much of a response. But remember that the crowd energy one was like, that's actually a really good question. But like, luckily the journalist before me had already asked the other question, so that I was able to ask him that. And as soon as I asked him about the crowd and how I was able to, you know, energize him, his face just lit up, and he just basically said, you know, because of the crowd, you know, it went to 4 sets. If it wasn't for the crowd, I would have lost in straight sets. And you know, it was the biggest thrill for me. It's such a probably minor thing, or might seem like a minor thing, but I remember watching when it came onto YouTube, because obviously it live streams straight to YouTube, and I remember the caption of the video, whatever it's called, you know, when it has like a little thumbnail or the caption on the like video, which just before you click on it, it'll have like a screenshot, and it'll have like a quote that they've said or a couple of words, and literally the quote was from my question. It was like, if not for the crowd, it would have been straight sets or something like that. And I remember thinking, like, I caused that, like when they were doing the video and doing the thumbnail, they picked that one, which was based on my question. So there was this real sense of like, this is a real thrill.
And what I'll say with that as well, it's a shame how they don't sort of quote the actual journalist who does ask the question.
Exactly right.
Which that sort of makes you a bit angry at the same time, because you've done all that work to ask that good question. You get that answer and response, but then you get the social media side of it who sort of don't credit it at the same time. I've seen that for other sports as well, where journalists have sort of put, you know, a journalist like myself, for instance, out there saying, oh yeah, this one asked a question, maybe on Twitter or something, a post that a popular journalist put, and he's like, oh yeah, this young journalist asked this question, he's up and coming, just, I don't know, check him out or something.
Yeah,
just sort of that side of it. hopefully, like, we could probably see a bit more of it maybe in the future. But yeah.
I guess, like, yeah, you tend to remain anonymous unless you're, like, you know, someone like, say, Ben Rothenberg that, like, does, like, you know...
Someone popular. Like
someone that everyone knows, or, like, because he's constantly on, like, he's holding his Twitter, right? Yeah. So, and he's one of those, like, he's developed a niche for himself as a journalist, right? Because it's, like, it's kind of like he has, like, not, I wouldn't call him a shock jock, but, like, a lot of the stuff that he posts is, like, you know... stuff that kind of like is a bit could be controversial, like the things that he reports.
But he's not scared to go there.
And he's not scared to go there. Yeah. Whereas I think I don't know what your kind of experience was like, but like for me, my personality is I just want to, well, not necessarily like I want to report the facts, but I want to have a personality as well, but I'm not there just to create a headline for the sake of creating a headline. I also want it to be like I like to look at it as I'm telling a story here. Like
exactly.
We're here, whatever's happening, we're creating history in some respect. Like even as journalists, I think, because like I said, that whole experience, me asking that question, that could trigger something in Carlos Alcaraz's mind to be like, oh yeah, the crowd did lift me up. You know, maybe I could use that energy next time I play.
Yeah.
And then if I've kind of created this light bulb moment in his head, and like he's lit up as he's answering my question, and then that could also be, something where, it'd be nice to be credited for kind of spurring that on a bit, but I guess like in the media, maybe there's still this stigma of like, we have to kind of remain anonymous a bit. I don't know what your kind of take is on that, but
yeah, I mean, for myself, I'm like you. I don't really like to cause it too much of a headline, like there too much of the clicks. I'm just there to sort of ask educated questions where I feel as though other journalists may not go down that path. They might. We've heard it time and time again, silly questions being asked. We sort of laugh at them.
Okay, 7 Australian Opens, 15 slams.
Not too bad.
But yeah, it's just my role. Basically, I want to do just ask informed questions that I know that players wouldn't have been asked in the past as much, because if you ask the same repetitive questions, they're obviously going to get tired of them.
Of course.
But a player like Djokovic, for example, it's very difficult. He's been around the tour for years.
What can you ask him?
You're at that point, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there was an instance before the tournament began when Alcaraz, sort of before his first round encounter, I asked him about... is there sort of a worry around not winning a title since Wimbledon, and sort of his lack of form, or his losing games that I guess he shouldn't have lost. And I sort of asked that straight to him. He was fine with it because it's not sort of offensive towards him. He understands that he didn't play at his best level since Wimbledon. So I asked if that was sort of a factor coming in, if he sort of changed anything within his game style, with his coaches, etc. So yeah, just stuff like that. I think it's important for journalists just to be a bit more educated around just questions in general.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you touch on. Actually, is there's nothing wrong with asking you can still ask a pointed question if, like you said, it's you've done your research, and it's also like it's something that people would be interested to hear a response about. I guess if it's the same type of question over and over again, or it's a really obvious question, like you mentioned with the Ukrainian journalists asking about the war and stuff. When it's like something like that, that's when it gets you can push it's not push the boundary, but
and that's where the clicks
gets too repetitive.
Well.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Because they know it's going to grab a headline, but for us, it's not about that. It's about picking their game, because we're passionate tennis fans. We're not about the gossip side of it as much.
And I think that's where it starts for me. That's where I don't know if I'm sure you're in the same boat. For me, that's where it starts. Is we start as tennis fans, and our kind of channel is through media as a way of accessing all these matches, but then reporting on the facts about a sport that we love and players that we love as well. And speaking of that, I also want to touch on I know that you have Italian background, and Yannick Sinner, one of your big, one of your favourite players. I don't know if he is your favourite player.
Favourite by a mile. After Berrettini. Berrettini's gone down a pecking order, still number one.
I know. It's a bit unfortunate. Berrettini's had a few injury issues. But so kind of tell us so before the tournament, had you picked him to win? I remember you did write a piece at one point. I think it was maybe in the first week after his second or third round win. Could he go all the way? This is before he beat Djokovic. Did you pick him right from the start? Did you think it's his time now, or did you have to? Was it results based? Was it like if he wins, comfortably, or if he beats a really big player, like, if he beats Djokovic, for example, then it's going to prove that fact.
So obviously at the end of last year, I was sort of watching all of his games, from the Nitto finals, to the Davis Cup where he won it for Italy as well. So after that Davis Cup final, I thought, if he maintains this form and he's able to carry it over into the Australian Open, I tipped him from there to win the tournament, because at that level, I just didn't see anyone being able to stop him, honestly. His sheer power. He already beat Djokovic beforehand, got the better of Medvedev a few times, so he was already past that sort of mental hurdle, if you want to say, because I think that's the part that sort of, he struggled a bit, because I think he mentioned as well, I'm not too sure if against Hurkacz, the Miami final or the previous final he played, he said the night during the final, I was sweating in bed. I just couldn't sort of deal with the pressure. So as time, exactly. So as time's gone on, he's been able to, and obviously Darren Cahill has been massive in his coach's box as well to deal with that aspect as well, which is the main reason why he's there, to be honest. As well, he's obviously his coaching style and whatnot, obviously quality. But my only doubt with him was that couple of months off, because he didn't play a competitive match before this Australian Open. He played a couple of games with Kieran, I believe. So I thought, okay, his form might dip a bit. That was my only concern. But I was positive if he was able to maintain that form he showed previously in the October-November stage, he was going to win it.
Yeah. Correct. I think you're right. Like, I think he had already shown enough form at the back end of last year, 2023, to prove that, he was going to be a serious contender. And he sort of has been before. But like you said, I think at the end of the day, we all agreed, we beat this issue over the head. It's always a mental. In tennis, it's always mental. Like, anyone in the top 10, even anyone in the top 50 or 100, to be honest, has the game, realistically speaking. But to separate the top 10 from the rest, and then even the top 2 or 3, and players that genuinely are in contention of Grand Slams, it's all above the ears. It's all mental.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And I think you're right. Like, for me, Sinner, I always thought that he was capable and that he was mentally ready, but it was more like the big moments, like the finals. Like, he would get to a final, or he'd get to a quarters or a semi, and then just like the big moments got to him. Like, he wasn't like, someone like, I don't know, Felix Auger-Aliassime that has all the talent in the world, but just like mentally is just kind of all over the shop. Even someone like that people have talked about for such a long time is like, when is he going to break through? Again, I think he's got mental issues, where I think with Sinner, he always seemed like he was like, he never has an outburst on court. He always, he speaks really well.
Really humble.
And he doesn't, and generally, like, he, gets the best out of himself. Like, he at least gets to those opportunities, but it was just like that last hurdle of getting to a final, getting to past this quarter, semis, final,
for sure. But to be in this position now that he's in, I think he had to experience those sort of low moments.
I agree.
Where,
I 100% agree.
From memory, he was 2 sets up against Djokovic in the Wimbledon quarters. I think a couple of years ago.
Yes.
He had match point in the quarters against Alcaraz, the US Open. Alcaraz went on to win the US Open. So it's those little moments like that where he's been able to learn from those experiences and grow, which is what you need as a player. And he's got that right mentality, because other players, I don't know, maybe a Felix, for example, would have said, okay, I've had these moments, maybe it's not my time, maybe I'm not sort of built for these big moments. But Sinner's taken it the other way. He's grown as a player. So all credit to him.
Yeah, very good point. And so what would you say let's talk about highlights, lowlights. What were some of your highlights of the Australian Open, both just in general and as a media representative?
Probably the main one, besides the media part of it, was just being at all the games. Just
having access to all the
because like I said, I've been to the Australian Open before. I've watched mainly ground passes, been to a couple of Rod Laver, but to get access to sort of any game you wanted was sort of surreal at the beginning, and then towards the end of the tournament just felt it felt normal in a sense.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? It did.
And you felt guilty.
It
felt guilty because you hear about, spectators having to pay hundreds, even thousands of dollars for seats, and then here you are just getting it for free for a few bucks to spend with your pass for food. It's pretty surreal when you think about it. But in terms of the media side, it'd have to be press conferences. Just like I said, asking your idols, questions. I got to ask Sinner questions, Djokovic, Alcaraz, Sabalenka after the final. So So yeah, just those little experiences where also you can connect with other journalists.
Yes,
who
yeah.
I think we also have to mention, high profile, ABC, Channel 9, what have you. So yeah, just to make those connections was really valuable and good learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me personally, I was going to say the same thing, the access to all the courts, but I think what was really the best part of the Australian Open was the fact that you didn't have to ever line up, ever. And part of me also felt a bit guilty. Like I know at the start we always talked about flexing your media pass.
Yeah.
That was like the theme of the week, flex your media pass. If someone's sitting in a media seat, because sometimes it happened, you have a set allocated number of media seats, and then sometimes there'd be someone sitting off, like most of the time, except for obviously the finals where it was, there was more demand or more journalists, wanted to attend them. There was usually plenty of free seats, so it didn't really make much difference. But I do remember that, a few of us had experiences with someone that was sitting in the media seat where the security hadn't maybe correctly, or the seat usher, or whatever they're called, hadn't actually told them they couldn't sit there.
Yeah.
And so we did have to flex the media pass.
Well, you took my low light there, because that was exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, you were going to say that was your low light?
Because with the outside courts in particular, because with Rod Laver and, John Cain, Margaret Court, the seats are fairly open to media, because you don't necessarily get, because fans have to pay for tickets for the main courts to get in, so they'll obviously be in their seats. Whereas the outside courts, like Court 3 for example, where a lot of Aussies were, you found heaps of spectators probably didn't obey the rules. They just sat in the media boxes, and it was just a bit annoying to ask the security to sort of get them out of their seats so you could gain access, because at the end of the day we got media accreditation, we're eligible to be in that position, to report on the games and stuff. That's what we're there for. So that part of it was probably the only frustrating or disappointing part of it, but besides that,
and I was going to say too, I think one of the other, for me, great highlights of the 2 weeks was the fact that there were still moments where I felt like I could watch the match just as a fan, because I guess just to also fill everyone in, we, for the first serve, I guess our main kind of, let's say, mandate was, our main priority was to cover the Aussies first. And, at the Oz Open, especially at the Oz Open, compared to other Grand Slams, there's more Aussies than there are there, just because they get wild cards and things like that. And so I think the first 2 or 3 days we were pretty busy because, particularly the first 2 days, I think from sort of Wednesday onwards of the first week, it kind of, you could spread out your day a bit more. But especially when you've got men's, women's, and then doubles as well. And I think when you had the first couple of days, doubles, wasn't getting as much attention. Then towards the end, it was getting a bit more love because, you could kind of spread yourself out a bit more. But having 5 of us there to cover all the Aussies was probably really, really good actually for Brett and a lot of people for the first serve team there. Because even in the past, he said that having 1 or 2, it's pretty hectic and you can't cover. I think we covered 2 matches each. And that felt kind of busy, but then from then on you could pretty much just cover one main match each. How did you find that? Did you find the first, did you find there were particular days that were really hectic and kind of stressful, or did you find it was just a matter of just managing your time and just working out how long you could stay there and watch the match and when you'd have to go to another one, or when you could start doing your write-up? How did you kind of find that?
Yeah, it was sort of the managing side of it, I'd say, more than hectic. Yeah, it was a bit hectic, especially the first couple of days. Qualifying as well, because there were a lot of Aussie qualifiers, I was the only one there.
You were the only one that did qualifying, that's right.
Yeah, Todd was there for a couple of days, one of our members from the first serve. He was there to help out a bit, but even with the tournament itself, when it commenced, a bit hectic the first couple of days, but like you said, we have 5 or 6 members to help out, run around. If Brett messages the group to say, can you cover this game? So it's just about managing your time at the end of the day. What you need to do if you got a game set at 3:30. Christopher O'Connell, for example, the opening day I covered. You just got to manage your time. Say, okay, I'm going to watch this game for full. Know when his press conference is scheduled for. Maybe go to the radio room to write up a match report before wait for his quote to add into the article. So stuff like that. Just all about scheduling, managing your time.
And before as well, just talking about the radio room, you mentioned earlier about some of the higher profile, say, journalists there. Just to kind of fill everyone in again, the radio room, I guess, was relatively big kind of room in the media hub, and it was one of those rooms where you could just you just walked in. We had our workstations. I think we had 3 or 4 desks, 3 or 4, and there was still pretty high profile journos there, but it just seemed like everyone was just there
doing their own thing. Yeah.
But like, how did you find that, like walking in there for the first time and then hearing, like, especially like say the journos that were like doing the Channel 9, or like the more like they were doing the like recording their voices for like the when you cross to someone, oh, this is Clint Stanaway, Channel 9, in the radio room, whatever. How did you find that? Did you find that a bit quite cool because you felt like you were in the same position as them, like you're on the same level? Were you intimidated a bit? Like, how did you sort of find that?
No, I found it really cool because behind the scenes, like just for the average person, watching the news at home, you don't know all the recordings that go into it. Even myself, I thought, oh, okay, this is how they do it. This is how, they take about 5 or 6 recordings just to make sure it's absolutely correct. So when it does go to air, it's 100% perfect. So yeah, just to learn bits and pieces like that behind the scenes just felt pretty surreal. Then you had, international stations, you had German, British.
That's right. That's true.
All of those as well. So speaking different languages is a bit overwhelming, but all in all, great experience.
Do you think it was a good opportunity to network, or did you find like it hard to find a way? Because I guess like for us, like as kind of starting out, first time media at the Australian Open, like how are you going to go up to someone unless there's like unless there's like someone's introduced you? Did you find that you could just go up to someone? Like, did you go up to anyone like kind of cold, like a cold intro and just like say, hey, I'm Christian, working for SEN for the first serve, nice to meet you kind of thing? Or did you feel like you needed to be introduced, or there needed to be some sort of some link to kind of get you into a conversation?
Yeah, a bit of both. So I mean, the first part probably had to maybe introduce myself for the people who I weren't so familiar with. So, maybe a couple, maybe internationally. There was one from South Africa that I met, really great bloke. Met him first couple of days, and then from there sort of, networked a bit, just asked, his profession, what he does, etc. But in terms of like the more high profile names, you sort of have that feeling of, trying to think of the word, but you're like, do you really belong here? It just feels a bit weird, just sort of, talking to them.
It's like the imposter syndrome kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. But then over time, like with more experience as it comes, I'm sure, that'll settle the nerves and stuff. You feel as though like you're in that position to sort of talk. You belong. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, probably that all takes a bit of time, but it's just a great opportunity to network at the end of the day. Just to see people who've been there, done that, and just to learn off them. Yeah, it's valuable.
Yeah, definitely. And would you do it again? Like, is it something that you're going to continue to do for the first serve or for another platform? Do you think you'll continue to do it as long as you can?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I plan on sticking around the first serve for as long as I can, really, because obviously as well, Brett Phillips, we know, has a few media accreditations, around the world, traveling.
That's right.
Indian Wells, for example, was there a couple of weeks ago. So that's something I'd love to do as well, travel a bit, maybe next year or the year after, hopefully maybe plan a bit around that, hopefully go to a Grand Slam or two internationally. But for the Australian Open, like, it's in our backyard. You don't get that opportunity every day. So, I mean, we're very privileged and fortunate to have that chance. So, definitely looking forward to next year if that chance arrives again.
You're right, sure. I think you're right. Like the Australian Open, like you said, being in our backyard, it is a great launching pad for them especially being connected with Brett. I guess having that that access to other Grand Slams as well, and like if he trusts you and we've kind of proven ourselves as journalists, it's like I said, it's a great launching pad for the other Grand Slams. How about in general, like your summary of the 2 weeks or say the 3 weeks for you doing the qualifying? How did you rate this year's Australian Open compared to say previous years? Obviously, this time round was a more intimate experience because you're a journalist, but how would you compare to other years? Better, worse, different? Was there things that you think they could have done better, or do you think overall it was just a great tournament?
I thought honestly overall it was a great tournament. It started with commencing that Sunday, so we never had that before.
Yes,
so we got that extra day in. I think broke records in terms of crowd numbers, which is great to see. Obviously more people are going to turn up on a weekend, no work, etc. So you're going to get more turnout. So that was a cool experience just to see. A lot of people really do love tennis, just to get that feeling back, But in terms of, players and stuff, obviously Nadal and Federer, the likes, maybe people were questioning whether, okay, is this new era of tennis going to maybe fall by the wayside a bit, not having those couple of legends in. But it was anything but, obviously we've seen a new generation come through. Sinner won it. Alcaraz is such a talent. Medvedev's still there and about. So, I mean, then on the women's side, you had also the mums coming back. That was sort of the narrative around it, which is really cool to see. Kerber, Osaka, all those players. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of the overall tournament, I think it was run really well as always. Craig Tully, I think, did a wonderful job, adding new initiatives like Court 6, for example, the courtside bar. Thought that was pretty interesting.
Yes, that was quite cool. That's something I really enjoyed, actually, the courtside bar. I thought it was a good addition because it had a really cool... I don't know if anyone here went into the Australian Open this year or went to the courtside bar, but had a really cool view of some of the outside courts. So, like, especially like a lot of the doubles that, you probably wouldn't have got, people wouldn't have normally gone to watch if it was like, unknown players, let's say. But I felt like it had a really cool view, and it kind of encouraged people to actually, watch some, have really great vantage point to watch some great tennis while relaxing and having a drink.
100%. I wanted to mention as well the media team, like the managers and stuff, because I think it's level 3 that they, conduct their work. You've got, for people who don't know, obviously behind the scenes, they've got a terrace that all the players go for, the interviews for, I know Channel 9, obviously it's the main broadcast, so they'll get the rights. So obviously I requested a few players, which I got from memory. I think James Duckworth, Kimberly Burrell were a couple of Aussies that I got to interview at the terrace. So
I interviewed Dane Sweeney as well there, and he was, and I think all the Aussies, a lot of those ones were very open to just...
Yeah, I've got Sebastian Corda as well. I don't know how I got him. It was straight after his match. I think it was like 11:30 at night. So for him to give his time away like that was, really appreciated that. But just that whole experience in general, just the communication. I'd get a text saying, okay, this player's ready to be interviewed in 15-20 minutes, for example. So all that stuff was really well organised, and press conferences as well on top of that. So
I agree.
Really good.
I certainly agree. Like, I think the other thing I was going to mention, I forgot to mention before, but just for those who weren't aware, like one thing I didn't actually realise that we'd have access to is there was that WhatsApp group as well, which I can't remember.
I didn't realise after the first couple of days, and then Brett, I think, mentioned again.
Yeah, that's right. He did. Yeah, because I think I saw it in one of the emails, but there was basically a WhatsApp group that was essentially told you when the interviews were going to, what room they were going to be in, how long they were going to, when they were going to be scheduled, kind of thing. And then there'd be an announcement over the loudspeaker as well, the PA. And I really liked, I found it was just really, and also if you'd request like a one-on-one, you would get a personal WhatsApp message to say, this person has agreed to it or not agreed, or they're going to do an interview in the main interview room or whatever it is. I found that was just really well organised, really well communicated. I mean, personally, I didn't have any confusions as to I found it was quite confusing layout initially to get used to where each room was, and
which is expected.
But overall, in terms of the how it was organised, I think it was done really well, especially for someone new like me and like us, to be able to kind of figure it out. You figured it out pretty quickly, didn't you? The first day it might have been a bit like I said, overwhelming, but I think within a day or two most of us kind of got the hang of it pretty easily.
And because it was my first time, I honestly wasn't expecting too much of it. I might get one play here or there who'd accept, but I think it was one of the final days of qualifying, maybe day 3 or 4, where I was able to get that interview with Duckworth, which is my first one. So I got a message saying, you're going to be available in half an hour's time. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But I actually didn't expect it at first. Although I did request it earlier, I just sort of had to prepare my questions, on the spot, really. I just didn't expect it to land on that day.
Oh, on that day, okay.
Yeah, because there was no real sort of notice there, but which is fair enough. They can't really do anything about that time, etc. Players training, it just sort of happens, on the fly sometimes, which is fair enough. But all that was just pretty cool just to get used to. And then after a few days, you sort of got, like I said, get used to it.
And I think the other thing that I thought was great with working with Brett in the first serve is that he's pretty low key, laid back kind of guy. It didn't feel like, where I know like there's a journalist, Courtney Walsh, who I'll definitely hopefully get on the channel at some point. He's very experienced journalist. You've met him a few times, and I know with him, you know, because he's worked for like the Herald Sun and the Age and stuff, he'll have deadlines, you know, he was there as well working. And I saw him even at the final, like, because you and I, we were able to luckily attend the final, but we weren't there as journalists. We're just basically there as, or we were there as, you know, with our
Don't tell it to security.
Don't tell it to security. But yeah, we were, I mean, because there were enough of us, I guess we all could have, like, you know, shared the duties, I suppose. But I mean, they gave us the pass, whatever, for the final. So, but yeah, I noticed with, say, Courtney, he had his laptop out and he was doing the write up, and I know that I don't think he stayed to the end. I think he stayed until, well, then again, it was still like, even that fifth set was still very close. Like, I think because it was, what was it, 6-4. I think it was like 4-6, 4-6, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, something like that.
Yeah.
So every set was basically one break. And I think Sinner pretty much broke the last game of the set as well, nearly each set that he won. So, but I'm pretty sure, because what I found out happens with a lot of journos is, especially for the ones that have like the deadline, you know, within like 10-15 minutes of the match finishing, they've got to basically send the article, and then, you know, they'll do some quick editing, and they'll just get it up, and then they'll edit it on the fly, or like kind of live. So I guess the luxury for us was that there were deadlines, but they were very soft deadlines. Would you say?
Yeah, exactly. And then even with the quotes as well, even Brett would suggest at times to maybe publish the article on the website without the quote at first, and then maybe wait for the press conference later, and then add it in, add the quote, which is what professional news organisations do anyway. So, I mean, even for the final, like you said, I mean, obviously we got to enjoy the experience. Didn't really have to write too much. I think we had someone designated for it, but, you know, obviously we had 5 or 6 people, like we've mentioned before. So yeah, it was just a great sort of experience just to, you know, sit back, enjoy, relax, and watch it unfold. Yeah,
exactly. And so going forward, what are your kind of main goals, you know, as a journalist? Like, what are you planning to, like, where do you plan to take your career? Like, what's your sort of ideal? Like, do you want to just continue to be like a freelance journalist, or do you have like any particular websites, publications you want to write for? Do you want to, you know, travel? Do you want to cover, like, do you want to become like a targeted, you know, like a soccer? Because just for everyone that's not aware, Christian, you also do, you know, football, soccer, journalism as well as tennis. I don't know if you do any other sports, but do you want to target any sport particularly, or where do you see your kind of your future in journalism in the next sort of, let's say, 5 years?
Yeah, probably reviewing that over the past couple of months. I've probably come to learn that maybe soccer and tennis are my 2 sports that I'll predominantly focus on a bit more than the other ones. Not to say that, you know, I'm not going to report on them or write on them as such, but, you know, especially with uni now in the last years, only so much you can do. So I might as well just prioritize what I know best, which is tennis and soccer, and then, you know, go from there. And then obviously when I get some more free time, I'm hoping to, you know, go into the freelance sort of scape of it. So down the path of Courtney Walsh, for example. So, I mean, even broadcasting as well, to be fair, I'd be more than open to that on the side with writing. But obviously from day one, writing's been my main passion. Always love just sharing athlete stories. I write articles for the Inner Sanctum as well. Also, obviously, the First Serve is my tennis.
And the Inner Sanctum, just for those that aren't aware, is that a soccer website?
just for the other sports. So AFL, that's all other sports. So just another platform for me to, I guess, express my views and opinions, and just publish articles. So in terms of the next 5 years, hopefully maybe travel a bit to a couple of tennis tournaments, like I mentioned. That'll be a really cool experience. Like, even to be with Brett, for example.
Like Indian Wells.
So I'm not by myself as such. I've got someone there who's been there, done that. He knows the grounds, knows the surroundings outside the grounds as well. So that'll be a cool experience for sure. And maybe 5 years time, hopefully, you know, get signed for a big, you know, major news corporation. That's always the dream.
Of course.
More freelancing for now would be probably the main goal.
And talking about that, like in terms of just journalism as an industry, how do you see it evolving, and where do you think there is still room for, you know, like freelance journalists or journalists like us? Because obviously, you know, with the advent of, you know, like online, you know, digital, you know, the digital world, I guess, and online media, there's a lot of, I know from having a chat with a few different journalists that have worked at, like, you know, The Age and things like that, and like Fairfax Media, let's say, they have been cutting their budgets for, you know, forever, basically, for the last like 10 years, you know, gradually. Although I did actually see a cadetship at the Age published.
I saw that as well.
Which is interesting, I found, because I thought that they were cutting back on journalists, but maybe they still want, like, you know, a targeted, you know, journalist to go through that old school kind of training, like cadetship, because I think that's what Courtney Walsh did. He started as like a cadet. But where do you see the, you know, media and the media industry and journalism particularly going? Like, is it one of those things where, you know, now people, like, we've got YouTube now, like I've got my own channel, people, you know, any man and their dog can have a podcast. Where do you see the media going?
I think a lot of people recently have probably seen journalism in a different light, maybe in a more negative way, seeing more this gossip type, what we were mentioning at the start of our chat, you know, people, you know, journalists looking more at the gossip rather than the intel of the actual tennis or the player itself. You know, a lot of people are actually more interested in, you know, that tennis side of it, for example, deep, you know, what's the athlete feeling, those deep questions, those informed questions. So I think, you know, our roles, both, for example, we know that, you know, that's what we want to get at, to sort of gain that trust in people, to sort of, you know, get journalism sort of back on the map, because I think it has sort of declined just a little tad, but that's not to say there's not opportunities out there. I mean, I know for soccer, for example, there's a website called Keep Up in the A-League, so they, you know, post all their sort of soccer content, interviewing players, etc. So they're sort of the main site for that. But you know, a couple of jobs are made redundant, and then people are saying, okay, is the future really bleak? But even for myself with Inner Sanctum, me and a couple of guys have you know, recently started a podcast a few months ago when the A-League season started. So it's just little initiatives like that where if you find a niche, if you find a gap, you know, in journalism where you can sort of exploit and capitalize on, where you'll gain a big audience, you know, people really want to listen to, you know, what their favorite teams are doing, you know, what athletes are, you know, what they're doing. So, I mean, there's definitely a big gap for us. Just how do you sort of tap into that as such? And yeah, there's definitely opportunities out there.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like I said, it's like any industry, you know, it's constantly evolving, and it's just, you just got to kind of watch the trends. And then also there's an element of just staying true to yourself as well, because like I said, you can, again, I don't want to badmouth him, but you can turn it like a Ben Rothenberg that, you know, has he's got his own kind of niche of how he, his own way of, you know, reporting on tennis and things like that. And then there's, you know, more traditional paths that probably are still available. And then there's, you know, people that just start their own channels or platforms and things like that. So I guess, from my perspective, I feel like, I think a lot of it is also people will read you, or, you know, read an article of yours or watch a video of yours or listen to a podcast of yours if you have something of value to add, and they can kind of resonate with your personality as well. Like, it's very, I think these days it's very personality based, because, like, you know, there's a lot of people out there that anyone, like I said, can create a channel, a podcast, whatever, but not everyone's that interesting to listen to, you know, theoretically, right? So it's just, I guess it just means that it's probably easier to stand out if you do have a very unique personality, or you have a very unique way of reporting, or unique insights into, you know, into tennis, into, you know, any sport that you happen to be reporting on. So exactly.
And you might not have the skill for maybe writing, for example, where you're more that personality type, where you like to be in front of the camera and talk a lot in front of the media, where, you know, you can sort of organize maybe a companion piece where someone else can maybe write a piece on a video that you're talking about, whether it be tennis or whatnot. So you can sort of combine elements together, you know, network with other people's strengths and sort of work together.
Correct.
In that sort of sense. Because then you've got the other side where maybe perhaps for me, I'm probably not as great in front of the camera besides the writing, where that's my real strength. So, I mean, that's where I'd turn more to. But then again, you know, get help from other people in terms of, you know, editing a video, for instance, getting, you know, sort of a couple of opinion pieces out there to combat with the writing and the articles. So yeah, there's different ways.
That's a good way of putting it, actually. You know, I guess these days it's really valuable to have, you know, have multiple strings to your bow. I guess, like you mentioned, you know, being on camera, like even this, you know, this is something that, you know, it's new to me as well. So, you know, there's definitely a skill to that. And even when you look at like broadcasting, like what Brett Phillips has done for his whole career, and people that go down that path, that's you know, that's something that doesn't happen overnight. You know, it just takes years and years of practice. But I think if you have exposure to multiple different avenues of media, let's say, you know, from like I said, straight reporting to broadcasting to video to podcasting, eventually, you know, you build a, you know, a broad range of, your skill set, becomes quite broad. So, you'll hopefully stand out.
And some people are just born with it, aren't they? They're
That's
just,
right, absolutely.
like Brett Phillips, for example. I imagine he was just born just so good at the camera. Like
Brett Phillips speaking,
Yeah, exactly. It just comes naturally to him. Whereas, I think also he's training a few other kids as well to apprentices, I think, or something along the lines of that, in front of the camera, also a bit of commentary. So you're not always going to pick it up straight away just because you think, oh, I'm not good at this straight away. Don't think, oh, that's the end of the world. Always try and develop your skills, develop your learning habits, and it will come eventually with time.
Correct.
Just keep learning and you'll get there eventually.
Absolutely. Christian, thanks for your time.
Appreciate it, Sean.
Cheers, guys.